All right, looks like people are joining in now. Thank you everyone for attending In a Cook's Kitchen with Craig Soule, episode 2. If you tuned in last time, you know that you can ask questions and we'll try to get to them throughout the presentation. You can post them in the chat box and you can post them in the questionnaire box. If we don't get to them, we'll do our best to answer them at the end. There will also be some links I'll place in the chat box relevant to What's Up Mag, Essex Bank, and also southernmarylandmeats.com. And okay, we're gonna have a quick word from our sponsor. Go ahead, Carla.
Thank you for this opportunity to sponsor tonight's event and the opportunity to talk about Essex Bank. I am Carla Garcia, the branch manager for the Edgewater location. We are a community bank with 3 locations throughout Anne Arundel County, in Annapolis, Edgewater, and Crofton. At Essex Bank, we pride ourselves on serving the banking needs of our consumers and businesses that may not receive the individualized attention and exceptional service from larger national or regional banks. Our experienced bankers take the time to understand each customer and their unique financial needs. We make recommendations that will help each customer achieve their financial goals. Essex Bank hopes you enjoy tonight's In a Cook's Kitchen.
All right, thank you. Craig, the floor is yours.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my kitchen. This is indeed the kitchen in my house. It's a small kitchen, as many of you probably have. It's taken some getting used to from having a 1,500 square foot kitchen at a Cook's Cafe for many years to this, but I've gotten friendly with it. Not only that, my cooking has changed from cooking for lots of people to just cooking for my family. So a lot of the recipes I've done in the past, I've scaled down and gotten accustomed to working in this small space. Last week, if you were here, my goal was to try to emphasize the importance of the products that you use. We concentrated on chicken last week. We used a pasture-raised chicken from a small farm in southern Anne Arundel County and had quite a discussion about buying meats to do more than one thing in your house. So last week we took the chicken, we made chicken stock, we did a chicken piccata, and then we did a Mediterranean braised chicken. What I'd like to do this week is change to start talking about beef somewhat. Some of you may know that post the cafe, I've begun working with the Southern Maryland Agricultural Development Commission, SMADAC. One of my programs for SMADAC is Southern Maryland Meats. Southern Maryland Meats is a program involving different species of meat, livestock raisers, meat producers in Southern Maryland. To be a member of Southern Maryland Meats, you have to make a couple of commitments. One of which is to allow your animals to have access to pasture. Another one is very limited use of antibiotics, growth hormones, and those sort of things. So what we're trying to do with Southern Maryland Meats is create this brand and then be able to bring it to you so that you can use it in your kitchens. This week, I visited Earl Lumpkin at Park Green Hill Farm down in Leonardtown and got a couple of cuts from Earl. They are not your sort of typical cuts. I wanted to go through the values of these particular cuts and maybe butchering in general. One of the things about cooking and meats is that you go into a meat department at a grocery store and there's a wide variety of types of cuts of meat for you to use. And there are often people are not exactly sure of what cut of meats to use for what purpose. So things like chuck roasts and those sort of things are best for slow roasting. Things for that, like we're going to do tonight for fast cooking, top of the stove sort of things are the more familiar steaks, tenderloins, and things like that. What I have is kind of an unusual but very trending sort of things. I have two things to show you. One of which is a beef hanger steak, and the other one is a skirt steak. Both of those come from an interesting part of the cow. One thing that I have learned since I left the cafe is that I've learned how to butcher. And I've worked with butcher shops and a facility in St. Mary's County with our Amish. We built a building and we're actually processing meats within the building. And I am happy to say, for the last 2 years, I've been working with them and we are now USDA certified so we can start processing meats for retail, which is going to open up an entire avenue for producers in Southern Maryland to be able to sell to you. So hanger steaks, which is this, and skirt steaks, which are this, are not from your typical parts of the cow, actually from the beef. These are actually from what's called the short plate, which is these are actually come from the diaphragm area of the cow. So you have to sort of picture a cow on 4 legs, and it's up in this area here. The flank steak will be down here. The skirt steak and the hanging tender are up here, and they're commonly known as butcher cuts. And why are they butcher cuts? Is that they really are the most flavorful cuts of the entire beef. And they're not part of the normal butchery process. So they're taken out by the butcher and usually taken home instead of put out. And there's only one hanger steak and one skirt steak per animal instead of 2 legs and 2 shoulders and those sort of things. So they're highly prized, and they're also, when cooked right, some of the more tenderloin, some of the more tender cuts of meat. So tonight, I'm going to spend a little time with this hanger steak. It's thicker, kind of looks like a flank steak. It has a rib down the center of it that is not edible, so we need to work around that. The only time that these meats, these cuts can be chewy, toothy, is if we overcook them. So let's not do that. So what I thought I'd do tonight is kind of a French bistro treatment. Skirt steak very in tune with cuts of meat that are used in French bistros. So I thought we'd do a quick skillet saute with the skirt steak. And then we'll make Dijon mustard sauce quickly at the side. And right before we're ready to serve that, I'm going to drop some pommes frites. Now, the pommes frites I have mostly done ahead of time. And I'll tell you why. Because French fries need to be cooked 2 times. You cut them to order, comme ça. And they're put in a fryer. Well, actually, we chill them first. This is how they used to do it at Leal in New York, is that you first need to chill the potato. Traditionally, in a restaurant, you may do this in an ice bath. So you need to bring it down to roughly about 35, 36 degrees in an ice bath. Then you take them out and you put them in the fryer at 275 degrees for 8 minutes. And then you take them out and you let them cool to room temperature, which is what these are doing over here. I find that doing it at ice bath at home, because you don't have huge fryers, I just have a little baby fryer there on my back counter, is that in that process, you tend to transfer a lot of water from the ice bath into the oil, and water and oil don't like to get together very often. So it's going to limit your oil use. When I do this, I usually can keep oil for a week or 10 days, depending on what I'm frying. So what I do is I cut it, put it in a baggie, and then I throw it in the freezer for about 20 minutes to bring it down to temp. It's cold enough, and then I do the initial fry, 275 degrees for 8 minutes, take it out. And the last fry is going to just be 2 minutes at 375 degrees. So we'll do that right at the very end. Right now, let's start on this skirt steak. So this comes from the upper belly part of the beef. We're just going to season it with a little salt, kosher salt on both sides. Preheated this pan because if you have an electric stove like I do, you know that it takes forever for things to heat up. So preheated the pan. I'm going to do butter. And we're going to put this on for, I would say, 5 to 7 minutes per side. We have to be careful not to burn the butter, so I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil. What that does is that ups the flash point for the oil that we're using. Butter tends to burn at a very low temperature. If you add a little olive oil to it, then you can do a little higher flambe, which is what we're doing. In my sink, I have a bleach bucket. The recipe is 1 teaspoon of bleach for every quart of water. So cleaning off my cutting board with the bleach water, knife blade, and while we're talking, we're going to start on the mustard sauce. So shallots. And by the way, if any of you have questions about meats or where to buy them, drop it in the chat box and they'll read it to me and we can answer while we're cooking.
Greg, someone asked if you could describe what flat iron steak is.
Flat iron steak is actually part of the chuck area, and the chuck area is this area right behind the shoulder. So I know that colloquially people use skirt steaks and flat iron steaks sort of interchangeably, and they're not. They're from an entirely different part of the beef. Although, having said that, you can use that same treatment that we're doing right now with a flat iron steak. You can actually do this, what we're doing right now, with any sort of steak. What I like to do, actually it was warm enough today to do it, but what I like to do is fire up the grill and put some color on meat like this on the grill, not cook it entirely, just put some color on it, put it on a sheet pan, and then toss it into the oven to finish while I'm doing other things. Okay, so in the back pan, I've started with shallots. And I'm going to put a couple of teaspoons of green peppercorns in there. Butter, shallots, green peppercorn. We're going to cook the shallots until they start to soften. Take a look at these. One thing all kitchens should have is a $5 meat thermometer. So what we want to do with these particular cuts is we want to cook them to an internal temperature of about 125 degrees. 125 degrees is medium rare, taken at the thickest part. Now, admittedly, these are pretty thin steaks. Let's just see.
Greg, someone asked
about
what burner settings were.
Burner settings. Right now, as you probably notice, I just turned it up a bit. I'm at 7 right now. I preheated it to 5, and it was like that for maybe 10 minutes, and just turned it up to 7. The shallots, they're on 4 right now. The idea behind French bistro cooking is most of the prep should be done well before orders are taken. So as I've done today, I've done my mise en place. Mise en place, 3 French words, M-I-S-E-E-N-P-L-A-C-E, means everything in its place. So I prepared, I got everything for my sauce ready, trimmed the beef. This, by the way, was part of the fats and the sinew that I trimmed from the beef with this, so that it was just down to the leanest part. These are also very, very unique in that they still have a ways to go. In that for beef to be properly served, they need to be cut against the grain. So most of the time it's sort of intuitive, but you need to look at the grain itself. And these don't help you in that. I'll just take the one out that I just put in. And sort of now common knowledge would be sort of cut it this way, but actually the grain is running this way. So what we would want to do is cut this way. Now, obviously it's still pretty rare. All right. Okay. This is softened. Now we're going to add some chicken stock, and I'm going to turn it up because I want to reduce it. Chicken stock. Some good Dijon mustard. Some heavy cream. And we're going to crank that up. And we also are going to finish that with a little brandy. So while this finishes, let me give you, just impart a little bit about the work that we've been doing in Southern Maryland, how you can access some of the meats and some of the products that we're using right now. There are 5 farms in Southern Anne Arundel County that actually sell local beef. 2 of them sell retail cuts to the public. The other ones The other ones just sell quarters, halves, or wholes. So if you have a big freezer and you want to stock up the wintertime, you can order from one of those farms, and they'll facilitate the entire process to get to you the meat that you've ordered. That's called custom processing. The Amish, as I just talked to you about a few minutes ago, had always done custom processing in the past. Now they're moving into USDA certification, which means they'll be doing it under constant USDA supervision, which is what happens to be able to sell meat into a retail food chain. The two that sell retail cuts to the public, one of them is at the Riva Farmers Market on Saturdays. Enticement Meat, Dina Tice would be more than happy to sell you some of her beef. And the other one is New Roots Farm, which is down in West River, which is the same farm, Sarah Campbell's farm, which is the same farm that sold us the chicken. So it's a multi-species farm down in West River. And with Sarah, you need to get on her website and call her. How do you find the website? You go to southernmarylandmeats.com and do a search for Anne Arundel County, and it will take you to all the different farms in Anne Arundel County, in fact, throughout Southern Maryland. And you can search by species or search by area. But at any rate, what we are doing now that we're starting to get local meat processing is that I'm building a regional agricultural center in St. Mary's County. And the regional agricultural center will be anchored by a butcher shop and a charcuterie operation, aggregation and distribution functions. So I know from kind of being the local foods guy for years that people generally need to go out of their way to be able to find local foods. I think it's worthwhile to do it, but we are increasingly becoming a convenience culture. So if it's not convenient, somehow it gets difficult to do. So one of my projects right now is to start bringing local foods into being more convenient for you to buy. The Regional Agricultural Center with aggregation and distribution should be able to do that. So we are reducing here. I'm going to add a little brandy to this. Just a couple tablespoons. I'll try to light it, but it doesn't want to light. But it is thickening up nicely.
Craig, we had a question.
here- yes.
Can you eat these rare or medium rare? And then a follow-up question from someone else is there a benefit of salting prior to cooking versus days or hours before cooking?
This meat, well, second one first. This meat has been dry aged for 21 days. So it's driven out a lot of the moisture. That's what hanging and aging does, is it drives out moisture and intensifies flavor and makes it more tender. So salting would do nothing at that point, like all that 2 hours before, except add salt. I do this because it helps seal, and it helps give you a nice crisp coating when you do a high temperature saute. And the first one at August was what?
The first one was, could you eat the cuts of those meat rare or medium rare? I believe they're referring to.
Hopefully, if I did my job right, it's medium rare. So I guess we're going to see. So here we go. The grain is going this way, but we're going to cut it this way. And you want to slice these reasonably thin. And while we do that, I'm going to drop the French fries. And I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes. So I had mentioned that this is a Leal restaurant recipe, which means it's an Anthony Bourdain recipe. So this is the French fries that he used to make. Me, when I go to a restaurant and I see that they make their own pommes frites, I'm hooked. But the only way to do that is to do it the way that I'm doing it right now. So here we have, not totally sure how much you can see, but this is medium rare. Very quick mustard sauce. Say something about the green peppercorns. Green peppercorns are marvelous things. The only place you can find them in Annapolis is Whole Foods. I actually ordered these off everybody's favorite, which is Amazon these days. And I ordered them in the morning and they were on my front door that afternoon. I don't know how that all works, but it does. So while these are frying, what you need to do is get yourself a bowl and line it with a towel or paper towels. And this is actually my favorite part of the entire process, is to be able to take these out, hit it with salt, swirl it around, and there you go. Kathy.
Greg, we had a couple
So-
questions about those.
Yes. Yes.
The first one is, let me find it real quick. What does cooling the potato slices do?
The twice frying is to drive moisture out. So the initial fry is to drive a considerable amount of moisture out and then have it rest. And then the second fry is for crispness. So actually you're virtually 95% done in the first part and the second part. The chilling it beforehand gives you a longer amount of time to be able to have the oil do its magic on this, because it has to bring it up to temp and whatnot. And you had another question?
Yeah, and the follow-up question was, if you don't have a deep fat fryer, can you use a
Yeah.
Dutch oven on a gas range, or what about an air fryer?
Yes, you can, and you need to, I don't have mine handy, you need to get yourself a candy thermometer. The challenge in doing it in a skillet or a Dutch oven or those sort of things is that the temperature is important. So the 275 to 375 is a very important thing. So bringing it up to 275 in a skillet is a touchy thing, especially on an electric stove. If you have a gas stove or maybe even induction, it might be a little easier to do. But at any rate, when you first put the potatoes in, especially when they're cold, the entire temperature of the oil is going to go down. It then has to come back up again. So you need to limit the amount that you put in. And then the second part is 375. You need to get it up to that and not over it and not under it. So it's trickier. Is it possible? Absolutely. It's trickier. Is there another one?
Someone did ask about if you had any resources on the Eastern Shore.
Huh. I had a long conversation last week with the county administrator for Caroline County, because they're facing small scale meat producers across the country are all facing the same problems. And it was accentuated by COVID, in that over the last 20 years, there have been huge meatpacking houses have been established. And there are a number of very small meatpacking establishments, but it's hardly anything in between. And so what happened at the beginning of COVID is that grocery store shelves were being emptied. People were starting to look more locally for their foods, which was a terrific thing. And most of my producers sold out of meat in a very short amount of time. And then they tried to get their animals in to be processed, and everybody was wanting to do it at the same time. Right now, my producers are looking at dates to have their beef processed well into 2022, which means a couple of things. The beef gets much bigger. It takes a lot more money to be able to feed them that extra amount of time. So what we have, one of the values of having the Amish now opening up, is that now we do have another processing facility to be able to do that. So then you have the processing, special things need to be labeled, and then there's the distribution of it as well. So major chains, local grocery stores, restaurants, those sort of things need a reliable source of providing, which is the problems I've frequently ran into in the cafe, in that there's just not enough consistency to be able to support it, which is what I'm trying to do now, which is trying to do the consistency, get them delivered, get it in front of you. So when you go into a grocery store, for instance, and you see Southern Maryland Meats logo, then you know that these people are from your area. They raise their animals to a certain standard, and they're handled with care. So what we try to do tonight is kind of pare this down into about a 35-minute segment to sort of give you a taste of, and I wish you could taste it because I have a bite in my mouth and it tastes great. To be able to do that, our next class is going to be in 2 weeks. And I think we're going to kind of do a Julia Child themed thing. I'm going to do a pâte brisée, going to do a pie crust, and then do Julia Child quiche. And we should be able to do that in about 35 minutes to need it. So if there are any other questions, please fire away. If not, Carla, I'll let you tie it up.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions. So, oh wait, one just came in. Says if you wanted to complete on the grill, how long?
The grill, okay, not to take anything away from the grill masters in your family, but the grill, as far as I'm concerned, is just there for putting some color on it, and then I finish it in the oven. Let's even do something else. Let's even talk about ribs. A typical thing to do with ribs is to do them on the grill. What I like to do with ribs is I like to wrap them in foil, put them in the oven on a very low temperature at about 275 or 300 for a couple hours to really get all those juices and the fats to dissolve within the pork or the beef. And then I put them on the grill at the very end, slather on the barbecue sauce if that's what's wanted, and let that caramelize. And then that's the way I serve it. So the grill is, for me, is caramelization and colorizing the meat and not for fully cooking.
Thanks, Craig.
Great, my pleasure.
Carla, you want to sign us out? You there, Carla?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't. Thank you, Greg. We hope you enjoyed tonight's In a Cook's Kitchen. Essex Bank is very happy to sponsor this session, and we hope you learn a few things along the way. Keep Essex Bank in mind when you are ready to start your own kitchen renovations or other household projects. We offer the lending options that will meet your financial needs. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks everyone. Tune into the next one. The registration is available for episode 3 on our website. That'll be March 25th, again at 6 p.m. Until then.
Thank you.